The graduation address gives us the opportunity to hear from a very distinguished member of our alumni community. We are privileged today that the address will be delivered by Ms. Mary Harney. Ms. Harney is a well-established, respected member of the health, science and agricultural sectors within our country. Mary is Chief Executive of the not-for-profit organisation Gardner Dairy Foundation, which directs finances towards very significant and important research and development projects within our dairy industry. Ms. Harney has had extensive experience in areas of applied research, commercial, regulatory, pharmaceutical and biotechnology industries, as well as health and agriculture. Her previous positions include Chief Operating Officer, Research and Director, and the Office of Clinical Research at the well-established Peter MacCallum Cancer Hospital. Last year, Ms. Harney was the recipient of the Monash University Science Faculty Alumni of the Year Award. I therefore have much pleasure in inviting Mary to deliver the graduation address on this very auspicious occasion. Mary Harney.
Acting Deputy Chancellor, the Honourable Peter Young QC, Vice Provost, Graduate Education, Professor Zlatko Skrbich, Interim Dean of the Faculty of Science, Professor Kristina Wazowski, Head of the Department of Microbiology, Professor Steve Turner, ladies and gentlemen, and especially the new graduates, good evening. I graduated with a science degree from Monash in 1978. Yes, nearly 40 years ago. It even causes me to pause for breath. Although I can remember that day and the pride I felt and that of my parents just as you are today. But I can also honestly say that I don't remember the graduation address at all. I'm not sure mine will be any more memorable, and in any case, I've resisted any attempt to liven it up with jokes as I'm under very strict instructions from my children to just not go there, because apparently I'm the least funny person they know. So the bar is not high, but here we go. If there's one thought I want you to remember, life is not linear, and I can say that as a biological scientist, but rest assured, whatever projections you have for your career tonight, they'll neither conform nor happen. It will be far more varied and rich than you can imagine, and more global than for preceding generations. My advice to you is to always say yes to opportunities, maybe then ask a prudent set of whys, but a very non-linear and rich path will unfold. Maintain the rigour of your science, the curiosity inherent in strong scientists, but overlay it with courtesy. So be curious and be courteous for this untravelled path you're embarking on tonight. 40 years is a long time in any pursuit, let alone science. Imagine doing your science degree with no calculators or computers, or social media for that matter, as I did. I did VCE with slide rules and logbooks, which must seem like ancient history now, you've probably not heard of them. The very big brick Hewlett-Packard calculators came in for examinations while I was at university. The IBM PC came 3 years after I graduated, and the first Mac 6 years after I graduated. A world without computing, it's unimaginable. Even some of the aspects I learned in immunology in 1977, such as antibodies, were just theories. It's unbelievable now. This pace of change has made for a great ride in my scientific career, and I will touch more on that presently. There are fundamentally 3 things we need for the planet: to feed, fuel and heal. Feed, fuel and heal, both our people and our planet. Science, medicine and technology have underpinned the great human endeavours of our past, but they're even more critically essential for the future of our stressed planet. For that reason, your careers will not only be important to you, but indeed to all of us. Because now, perhaps more than any other time in our history, we need science and medicine to conquer so many of our man-made challenges which threaten our planet and ourselves. We need you to be and continue to be at your best. Now, I'm not going to really share any thoughts with you about science because your presence down there, and somewhat ironically mine up here, means you're well and truly ahead of me, possibly by decades. Your scientific career and global journey, however, will need more than your specialist expertise in your chosen scientific discipline. Within a couple of years, you'll have your first promotion. Within about 5, possibly a second one, or you'll be heading up a scientific lab, or quite possibly creating a business that you've created as an entrepreneur, and even more probably, a job that doesn't exist today. And then you will be grappling with different things, with business cases, revenue streams, budgets, people management, collaborative grant applications, unions, policy setting, and maybe even by then board reporting and governance. Your success will require you to have more than your scientific acumen. You'll need to consciously develop a parallel stream of personal and professional development to get you wherever your non-linear career is going to take you. It may sound odd, given the rigours of scientific thinking that you excel at, but you will need to embrace ambiguity, because as from here on, the people you will be working with and their responses to life and professional situations certainly won't be able to be predicted in a linear or scientific fashion. I'd encourage you to familiarise yourselves with cognitive cytology and behavioural economics, because you're going to need it. I'd like to leave you with 3 observations this evening: mentorship, ambition, and rate of change. Mentorship is a very bandied term currently, and formal matching Tinder-like programs abound. I believe these are to be avoided like the plague. This is not to suggest that mentoring is not important. It's critically important for all of us at every stage of our career. I encourage you to think deeply about mentorship in all its guises. But remember that the flip side of mentors is tormentors. And quite possibly your first boss may well be just that. My first great mentor, aka tormentor, was indeed my first boss. She was incredibly strict about work matters like punctuality, how we responded on the landline phone to doctors and patients. Yeah, it was that long ago, it was a landline. How we conducted ourselves in meeting with other professionals, standards of dress, cleanliness in the lab, zero tolerance for not wearing protective gear, and absolutely no frivolity. We were in diagnostic cytopathology, and that was a serious pursuit. I wouldn't say we butted heads. After all, there was almost 40-year age difference. She had too much composure and maturity for that. But I wanted to move quickly, author my first paper, have fun at work, organise drinks on Friday night. And I resisted the lessons she was teaching me in spades. Over time, I realised that in the politics of public health and hospitals, she was a seasoned campaigner, never losing lab size nor infrastructure nor number of employees. She was an effective, seasoned trooper in the trenches, without getting people offside, always gracious, courteous and steadfast. She was also phenomenally loyal to her staff. Ultimately, she supported me to start my second degree part-time, allowing me time off work, and then providing an incredibly strong reference for my first promotion at a relatively young age in charge of the cytopathology department at Royal Melbourne in the 80s. It's only as my career has progressed that I've realised what an extraordinary mentor she was. So my point is that sometimes the mentor relation won't be formally articulated nor enacted. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's actually up to you. Take note of everything going on around you. Note how a good chairman chairs a meeting and those that don't. Note when meetings are well planned with pre-reading and when some are not. Note when a great manager professionally develops staff and has a positive culture, and note the ones that don't. That last point, it makes me mindful of an old saying where a chief financial officer, always with an eye for the penny, says to the CEO, "What happens if we invest in developing all these young people and they leave us?" And the sage CEO response was, "Well, think about it. What happens if we don't and they stay?" So always have an eye to your own development, but make it very easy for your boss to support you in that. So you'll need to learn as much, if not more, just from observing what's around you, both the positive and the negative. It's up to you to develop these observations. So basically, I'm advocating that you're in self-imposed but a constant state of menteeship from the get-go of your careers. And then, of course, there will be the more formal approaches of monthly coffees and so on, where you identify someone you admire to draw on their wisdom. And at any given stage, there'll be multiple of these individuals helping you. An attribute that is deeply imbued in high-calibre mentors, and for that matter, good managers and terrific employees, is optimism. General Colin Powell once said, "Optimism is a force multiplier." So for your own mentorship program, be in a constant state of menteeship. Remember that optimism is a force multiplier, and of course, be curious and be courteous. Ambition. The flip side of this, there is also a notion of followership. It is not too familiar to too many, but it is the immutable inverse of leadership. There is so much focus on leadership today in our courses, our MBAs, our political arena, our military, our sports field. But think about it, it's a fairly simple numbers game. The top of the tree only has one leader. Proportionately, there will always be a larger number of followers. The reality is for most of us that in our time in our career may well be defined as being great followers, as not everyone can get to the top of the most senior or leadership position. There are only 200 CEOs of the top 200 ASX listed companies. There are only 8 chancellors of the G8 universities, for example. But the attributes of strong followership are the same attributes we seek in our leaders. So practicing effective followership throughout your career will stand you in good stead to constantly move up in your own career. Effective followers are defined as enthusiastic, intelligent, courageous, ambitious, and self-reliant. I'd add humour to that list. But note it does include ambitious and self-reliant. So being a good follower doesn't mean just following blindly or always being subservient. It does absolutely mean showing initiative and having a level of healthy ambition. I'd encourage you all to have that level of healthy ambition. But understand that if you're not practicing active and positive followership in your work environment, you may compromise yourselves. Don't ever let it be said of you, that common management lament that someone has their ambitions and competencies really mixed up. Be realistic about your ambition and actively support and follow your colleagues and those that are supposedly further up the career path than you. There's also some obvious examples of suboptimal followership. There are the yes people. There's the pragmatics, the ones who won't challenge the status quo or consider visionary options. And worse, there's the alienated, the ones who carp and undermine. But by contrast, there are the stars, and I'm sure that's you. Or to quote Tim Minchin, just be pro stuff, not anti stuff. Always do whatever is asked of you, no matter how wacky it sounds. I'm not sure, given your ages, how many of you might remember the Y2K or the Millennium Bug. Seems like another example of a galaxy far, far away. In the years coming up to 2000, there was a widely held view that all the global computing systems that had been built on a 4-digit numbering system that would not differentiate between 2000 and 1900, that they would all malfunction. So on New Year's Day 2000, it was conjectured that many computer-based systems, and by now that was just about everything, would malfunction. Airlines didn't even schedule to fly on that New Year's Day. The concerns were extreme. I was working in a biotech subsidiary of an ASX-listed company at the time, and it seemed like this was the single biggest issue or risk facing that corporation. Myself and the head of microbiology, so non-IT folk, were assigned as the reps to the weekly corporate war councils on how to prepare for this. The predictions became gloomier and gloomier as we approached the end of 1999. We left one meeting to go back quite bemused as the doomsday predictions seemed to be getting way out of hand. We, the non-IT mycologist and the non-IT chief operating officer. And I queried if he genuinely believed it might be this bad or we would have to do half the stuff that was being asked of us. He replied that he was just going to continue to give his wife $20 a week to buy toilet paper. Remember, this is 1999, so that was a lot of money. I drew the bait and asked why, and he said, well, if everything goes west, there'll be no power, no refrigeration, food will go off, food poisoning, everyone will be sick. Also, the sanitation won't work, people will get disease, everyone will get sick. So basically, everyone will have the squitters and need toilet paper. So he was either willing to make a killing in the black market toilet paper game if Y2K was real, or alternatively, if Y2K was a furphy, he would have a lifetime supply of toilet paper. We were followers in that instance, but our involved, measured, optimistic and humorous injections into the parent company represented attributes of good followership, and ultimately it was a career upward projection for both of us. We both espoused the motto of being curious and courteous, and optimism is a force multiplier. Now to my final point, the rate of change. You need to not just experience it, but to own it. I'm mindful of an event that happened in the mid-90s. I was travelling on an international flight in business class with a female colleague, Director of Clinical Trials. I was going to audit the clinical trials of this ASX-listed company was running overseas. We were talking animatedly about the project when we looked up to see 2 of the staff, male, just staring at our rapid speech, probably full of medical acronyms, and in a friendly manner they were on for a chat. So first they started with the, now where are you 2 lovely young ladies going to meet your lucky husbands? That was sort of a line. We, as they filled our glasses, we indicated that we didn't have husbands. They then assumed we were going off to meet sugar daddies. Why else would two young, well-dressed women possibly be in expensive business class? Again, we indicated that we were going for work and that it was indeed business. Without missing a beat, they both said in unison, "Really? They have conferences for secretaries?" By which time we were highly amused, and probably having another glass, and indicated again that we weren't secretaries, at which point this look dawned on their faces. They thought we were a same-sex couple, and then in almost hushed tone said, "Really? They have conferences for those?" This was 1995, not 1895. It was inconceivable to these two educated gentlemen who met a lot of business travellers that two women could be at executive level and travelling for their companies for work. So in that time, social morals are changing, and I agree, and we're nowhere near we need to be on so many issues like Indigenous equality, poverty, climate change, diversity. We can't take the foot off the pedal on those issues, but social change is nothing to the rate at which technology, science and computing has changed. Looking back, I started school before the JFK assassination. I can remember that day. I saw the moon landing in 1969. I did AI testing for what was Monash Medical Centre then for human infertility before IVF technology in the late 70s. I've seen and worked with Moore's Law unfold unremittingly over 4 decades. I was at work when widespread use of the internet entered the workspace. I've seen cancer diagnosis change from a 5-year life expectancy to a chronic, well-managed disease in most cases. It's been a great ride, and I've loved being a part of that ride and the development of science and technology over that time. But I suspect that mine will be nothing like the pace and scale of what your scientific careers will be. We now produce in an hour the amount of data that all of humankind had produced up until 2006, in an hour. From the days of the ancient Sumerian clay tablets, humans have published at least 310 million books, 180 million songs, 3.5 trillion images, 60 trillion public web pages. These are all contained in all the libraries in all the world. When it was first planned to fully digitise this sum of human endeavour, it was considered that it would be compressed to a digital footprint the size of a very large public building. By now, it will fit in a room, and possibly with tomorrow's technology, it will fit on your smartphones. It is said that you have more computing power in your smartphones today than President Clinton had in his presidency. Your cohort has never known any different or alternate universe where you weren't globally connected. Don't ever underestimate the power of this. And these comments aren't about a big wow about computing or big data or life was different in my day or the pace of change is amazing. It's about what all this exponential converging technology has ultimately got us to. A hyper-connected planet. It's about what we all do with the consequences. Artificial intelligence challenges what we even think of as intelligence, possibly even what we think of as a species. Yesterday, Bill Gates, in his post to the 2017 graduates, actually nominated AI as the most important aspect for graduates of the future to concentrate on so that the world, all of us, have more productive and creative lives. Ownership. What a changing concept. Think Airbnb, Uber, Netflix. It's not about owning physical CDs or DVDs anymore or bricks and mortar hotels. It's about access, not ownership. And we want immediate access, like binge watching Game of Thrones. But think about what does all this mean for property law, for intellectual property, for copyright and so on. Big questions. And your freedom to be untethered by bricks and mortar. Just think of the global employment opportunities for you. Cognitive computing. Adverts in Google and Amazon with phenomenal algorithms that seem to know you more than you do. The sheer power of all this connectivity. Medical groups in the US now monitor Twitter feeds and other social media for description of symptoms and can now pick up disease outbreaks such as Ebola ahead of the World Health Organization. In the inevitable, Kevin Healy asserts the third millennium, which is yours, will be amazing. This is the time when inhabitants of this planet first link themselves together into one very large thing, part human, part machine. At its core, 7, soon to be 9, billion humans cloaking themselves with an always-on layer of connectivity. Never has the consequence of all this change been so momentous, and the onus to feed, fuel, heal ourselves and our planet will be on you. I'm optimistic for you, and I believe your optimism will be a force multiplier. So in conclusion, 3 observations to leave with you to augment your science credentials. First, Seek and understand what you need in a mentor and initiate proactively those contacts at every stage. Don't wait for a matchmaking service. Be in a constant alert state of menteeship. Second, keep a balance between healthy, wise ambition and respectful followership, and learn how to recognise the difference. Third, we now have converging exponential technologies and a hyper-connected planet. It is an exciting time to be in science. Take full advantage of global connectivity and global responsibilities. Understand, relish, enjoy how special your time in science is. Let your optimism be a force multiplier, and always be curious and courteous. So the essence of all of this is captured in a wonderful reflection, 100 years old now, from the early 20th century. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I salute you and wish you luck for the great endeavour ahead of you. Good night.